Charlie would always say, these are your children, and you threw them out, and I took them in. Of course,
Sharon was crying and begging, please don't kill me. I just want to have my baby. Susan says, and I looked her dead in the eye, and I said to her, bitch, I don't care about you or your baby, and you're going to die.
I think the common denominator among these girls, they all had a deep-seated, pre-existing hostility towards society.
I don't know when enough punishment will be enough for me. Sometimes I think of how much
system and became killers. Manson was kind of an individualized version of the state, but they both had their hierarchy and they both had the following orders. So I think the Nuremberg trial would apply equally to the Manson family and the soldiers in the My Lai massacre. Every day during the trial, Sandra Good and other members of the family sat outside the court. This is where they heard that Manson and their friends had been sentenced to death. 1944, I went to a judge. That was the same judge that was in Nuremberg. That was hanging weapons, soldiers over there in the war. I stayed in the judge's robes under Dr. Hartman. I'm like his little boy. He raised me all my life. Everything I know, I got inside. I don't have any parents. I don't have mothers and fathers and family unit like you guys did. You did? I live in prison. I was raised inside the judge's body. I'm in the judge's robe. You've all judged yourselves poorly. Are you guys proud of the system where a man cannot defend himself? Are you proud of it? That was 8 months trial with many witnesses. Well, that was a trial, 8 months of prosecution testimony. They convicted these people, and you are next, all of you. Listen to me, there are many more men who are experiencing the same injustice. There's a revolution coming very soon. Manson, 35 in 1969, had already spent over 17 years, half of his life, locked up. He had been out of prison 2.5 years when the Tate murders were committed.
Not take him back. This was a turning point for Charles Manson.
The only thing my mother taught me was that everything she said was a lie. And I learned never to believe anyone about anything.
He ran away from the school again and began a life of petty crimes, including breaking into grocery stores and stealing a bicycle. In 1949, after time in a juvenile center, he was sent to Father Flanagan's famous Boys Town. According to a 1949 article in the Indianapolis News, a dead-end kid who has lived in an emotional blind alley is happy today. He's going to Boys Town. Manson ran away 4 days later. Now just 13, he stole cars, broke into stores, and committed his first armed robberies. He was then sent to the Indiana School for Boys, where he claims he was raped and repeatedly beaten. He ran away 18 times. Now the punishments escalated after he stole cars, committed armed robbery, and held up gas stations. He went from the National Training School for Boys to Natural Bridge Camp to federal reformatories at Petersburg, Virginia, and Chillicothe, Ohio, where he was paroled in 1954. He was just 19 years old. Around this time in Los Angeles, one of Manson's future followers, Patricia Krenwinkel, was a little girl. Her comfortable childhood could not have been more different from Charles Manson's, but even her home was not without its sadness.
during the time I was brought up, nothing was talked about. I mean, my parents' dissolution of their marriage, you don't talk about that. You don't talk about problems in the home. I never felt like I had a sense of who I really wanted to be or become.
In 1949, Leslie Van Houten was born into a solid middle-class family in Altadena, California. From an early age, she wanted to help the world.
There's been 50 million people die since Sharon Tate died, and I got everybody in Santa Claus land chasing me, trying to make me feel remorse for one episode, one psychotic episode in my life.
Sharon was crying and begging, please don't kill me. I just want to have my baby. Susan says, and I looked her dead in the eye, and I said to her, bitch,
victims had been stabbed a total of 67 times. Meanwhile, the news of the first night's murders had hit L.A. like an earthquake.
There was a
During the investigation, the family was actually arrested and then released on an unrelated charge of auto theft. They then headed north to the safety of Barker Ranch in Death Valley. On October 10th, the family was rounded up on new charges of auto theft and arson. And while they were in jail, the L.A. murder cases broke open. Family member Susan Atkins was implicated by another member in an earlier crime. Jailed in L.A., she blabbed to cellmates about the Tate and LaBianca murders. "The more you kill, the better you like it," she told them. Then one cellmate repeated the stories to the police. In December of 19... for the Tate and LaBianca murders began on June 15, 1970. Manson demanded and was refused permission to serve as his own attorney. Still, from the beginning, it was clear that Manson was in complete control of the defense.
You have to realize that I viewed Manson as being the main defendant. To convict his co-defendants and have him walk out of court, I think, would have been an unsuccessful prosecution. The problem was that Manson was not at the murder scene. He did not physically participate in these murders. So I had to bring him in by way of circumstantial evidence, and also by the law of conspiracy.
At the heart of the prosecution effort was the bizarre story of Helter Skelter, the stranger-than-fiction doomsday scenario that Charles Manson had woven from his earlier certainty of a coming race war.
Manson envisioned that white people would turn against the black man if they thought the black man had committed these 7 murders, and ultimately there would be a civil war between blacks and whites out on the street.
During the war, he told them, he said, we're going to hide out in the bottomless pit in the desert, a place he derived from Revelation 9, a chapter in the last book of the New Testament.
Manson foresaw that the black man would win this war. But later on, he said the black man, because of inexperience, would simply not be able to handle the reins of power. So we would have to look around at those white people who had survived, who had escaped from Helter Skelter.
And he said, we'll come out of the bottomless pit, and quoting Manson, we'll send Blackie on his way to picking cotton, and we'll take over the leadership of the world.
Chief prosecution witness was Linda Kasabian, who had driven the car on the night of the Tate murders. She agreed to testify in return for immunity.
Can you get out of the way?
The mood around the trial and throughout L.A. was as bizarre as the accused themselves.
It may be more than 6 months before the Tate case finally goes to trial here at the Hall of Justice, but Hollywood isn't waiting. 2 movies about the mass murders already are in the works. One producer said his film will concentrate on the hippie clan charged with murder and explain on the screen why they might have done it.
Day after day, Manson would come into court and by turns intimidate and amuse.
He was playing the people. He was playing to the courtroom. He was playing to the press.
We had quite a few staring sessions. He was always staring at people, you know. He'd stare at the jury, and they would turn away. He'd turn around and stare at spectators.
During the trial, as in their lives before,
on a farm near Woodstock, New York. The message was love. The mood was fueled by the energy and the ideals of the late 60s. But across the country, fear had spread in Hollywood, California. Actress Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, had been brutally murdered along with 4 others at an isolated estate.
All I can tell you right now is that we got 5 dead people, and we're trying to determine who caused their death.
And 24 hours later, a second killing. A middle-aged couple, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, had been knifed to death in their own home. The unknown killers left bloody graffiti at both scenes. When the killers were finally arrested, the city was stunned. They looked like average all-American young people. One man, 24-year-old Charles Tex Watson, and 3 women, 20-year-old Leslie Van Houten, 21-year-old Patricia Krenwinkel, and 21-year-old Susan Atkins. They could have been your typical girl next door. Yet their devotion to an ex-convict named Charles Manson was so extreme, it had led them to murder. Manson.
Charlie would always say, "These are your children, and you threw them out, and I took them in." They were the children of America, but he perverted them and corrupted them, and they became something else.
Charles Manson was from a poor background and had spent much of his life on the wrong side of the law. He had been in and out of jail, arrested for crimes such as forgery and pimping. But the most notorious of the Manson girls who killed, Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Atkins and Leslie Van Houten, were middle-class children. On the surface, they led comfortable lives in California's sprawling post-war suburbs. Leslie Van Houten was born in 1949, the second of 4 children. She was very close to her father, Paul, a car dealer.
She was very happy and outgoing and very athletic. And she seemed to enjoy life. She just was sometime without care and abandon, I would say. She did break her arm a couple times just by being energetic and being really into whatever she was doing.
She was from a very upstanding family in Monrovia, California. She was a homecoming princess. She was always very, very pretty and very bright.
Patricia Krenwinkel grew up in Westchester in the Los Angeles suburbs. She was the daughter of an insurance agent and a housewife.
Pat was a darn good kid. Didn't complain about anything. No matter where I took her, I never had one bit of trouble with Pat.
Then something happened that left both girls feeling alienated and angry. By the time they were in high school, both Leslie's and Patricia's parents were divorced.
During the time I was brought up, nothing was talked about.
2. The Supreme Court overturned the death penalty. Death sentences were commuted to terms of life imprisonment. In the case of Charles Manson, there was a certain irony involved.
In fact, he told me after the trial, Bugliosi says, "You know, you haven't achieved anything here," he said. "All you've done is send me back to where I came from." But I said, "Well, yeah, Charlie, that's true, but as far as I know, you've never been in the green room before." The green room is a reference to San Quentin gas chamber. The next year, I was driving my car, and the car radio was on, and I heard...
The year of the fork, because when Pat
He got into a situation where he had enormous power over these people, and he pulled it all together into this incoherent, hateful kind of plan, and there was no one there to say, "Charlie."
In 1967, Charles Manson recruited the first member of his hippie family, a Berkeley librarian named Mary Brunner. At 19, Lynette Froome dropped out of El Camino Community College.